In the humid summer of 1964, the world's attention turned to the calm, unassuming waters of the Gulf of Tonkin. An American destroyer, the USS Maddox, was on patrol, its gray hull a stark shape against the blue-green sea. This vessel was not merely sailing, it was conducting a signals intelligence mission, eavesdropping on North Vietnamese communications. The mission, codenamed DeSoto, was a part of a larger, covert program of pressure against North Vietnam. On August 2nd, the placid scene was shattered by the roar of engines and the churn of water. 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats made a direct run at the USS Maddox, their intentions unmistakably hostile. The American destroyer, alerted and ready, fired warning shots across the bows of the approaching craft. The warning was ignored, and the torpedo boats continued their aggressive approach. A brief but fierce firefight erupted, with machine guns shattering across the warm Gulf air. The Maddox, aided by aircraft from the nearby carrier USS Ticonderoga, repelled the attack. 1 North Vietnamese boat was heavily damaged, and the other 2 were forced to retreat. This first incident was real, documented and largely undisputed by all sides involved. It was what allegedly happened 2 days later, on the stormy night of August 4th. That would change history. The Maddox, now joined by another destroyer, the USS Turner Joy, reported it was under attack once again. Sonar operators reported dozens of torpedoes in the water, their pings creating a sense of panic in the Combat Information Center. Lookouts strained their eyes against the darkness, reporting enemy vessel sightings in the tumultuous waves. For hours, the 2 American ships maneuvered wildly, firing at radar and sonar targets that seemed to dart around them. Yet, there was a growing sense of confusion and doubt among the crew and commanders on site. The weather was terrible, creating freak effects on the radar and sonar systems. The commander of the task force, Captain John Herrick, sent a flash message expressing his own uncertainty. He suggested a complete evaluation of the event should be done before any further action was taken. Herrick noted that overeager sonarmen and the storm itself might be the true culprits. No crew member of the Turner Joy ever saw a torpedo boat or torpedo wake all night. Pilots flying overhead could not locate any enemy vessels in the supposed attack area. Despite the lack of concrete evidence and the on-scene commander's doubts, their reports flew up the chain of command. In Washington, D.C., the initial, frantic reports were taken as gospel truth. The ambiguity and doubt expressed in later messages were downplayed or ignored. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara became a key figure, briefing the president on the unprovoked second attack. He later admitted in his memoirs that his certainty at the time was misplaced. President Lyndon B. Johnson, facing an election, saw an opportunity to appear strong and decisive. He interrupted national television to address the American people with a somber message. He declared that North Vietnam had committed renewed acts of aggression against the United States. The narrative presented was one of clear, unprovoked hostility in international waters. There was no mention of the DeSoto mission or the doubts of the commanders on the scene. The American public, trusting their leaders, reacted with outrage and patriotism. Johnson immediately sought a congressional resolution to authorize military force. The Gulf of Tonkin resolution was drafted with incredible speed, a blank check for war. It granted the president the power to take all necessary measures to repel attacks. The resolution passed almost unanimously in both the House and the Senate. Only 2 senators, Wayne Morse and Ernest Gruning, had the foresight to vote against it. Senator Morse famously warned that they were all being suckered into a conflict. His words would prove to be tragically prophetic over the next decade. With the resolution in hand, the Johnson administration began a massive escalation of the Vietnam War. Operation Pierce Arrow, a retaliatory airstrike, was launched almost immediately. The incident provided the legal and public justification for a war that would last for years. It would cost the lives of over 58,000 Americans and millions of Vietnamese. But the story of August 4th refused to fade away quietly. Journalists and historians began to pick at the inconsistencies in the official narrative. The lack of physical evidence for the second attack was a glaring hole in the story. Years later, key participants began to speak out, expressing their doubts. James Stockdale, a pilot that night, famously said he had the best seat in the house and saw nothing. He flew for hours over the supposed battle, firing at targets that were never there. The most damning evidence, however, would remain classified for decades. In 2005, a National Security Agency internal history of the event was declassified. The NSA historian, Robert J. Hanyuk, concluded that the second attack never occurred. His report revealed that intelligence had been mishandled and misinterpreted at the highest levels. Signals intelligence had been distorted to fit a preconceived narrative of aggression. Hanyuk wrote that officials were not being forthright about the quality of the intelligence. The report confirmed that the Johnson administration had launched a war based on a lie. The truth was not that the administration deliberately fabricated the event from whole cloth. Instead, they seized upon ambiguous, faulty intelligence that supported their policy goals. They chose to believe the most aggressive interpretation of the chaotic events of that night. The Gulf of Tonkin Incident became a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked executive power. It highlighted the critical relationship between intelligence agencies and policymakers. It demonstrated how easily truth can be bent to the will of those in power. The lie was not a simple falsehood, but a complex web of doubt, fear, and political ambition. It was a lie born from the fog of war and the fog of bureaucracy. The sailors on the Maddox and Turner Joy were not lying. They were genuinely scared and confused. Their phantom battle was real to them, a product of weather and heightened tension. The lie was in the certainty projected by Washington, a certainty that never existed at sea. The hidden truth of the Gulf of Tonkin is the story of how a nation was led into its most divisive war. It serves as a permanent reminder to question official narratives, especially in times of crisis. The ghosts of those phantom torpedoes still haunt the legacy of American foreign policy. The calm waters of the Gulf hold a deep and troubling secret about the nature of power. The initial reports from the USS Maddox on August 2nd were clear and straightforward. However, the electronic intercepts that supposedly confirmed the second attack were deeply flawed. Many of the signals were misinterpreted North Vietnamese communications about the first incident. Analysts in the NSA were under immense pressure to produce actionable intelligence quickly. This pressure led to a confirmation bias, where evidence supporting an attack was prioritized. Contradictory evidence was sidelined, buried under the weight of assumption. The president and his advisors heard what they wanted to hear. The incident occurred in the context of the Cold War, a time of intense paranoia. The domino theory suggested that if Vietnam fell to communism, so would the rest of Southeast Asia. This fear created a powerful incentive to take a strong stand against North Vietnam. The De Soto Patrol itself was provocative, operating close to North Vietnamese territorial waters. It was part of a campaign of covert raids and sabotage against the North. This context was never provided to the American public or Congress. The attack on the Maddox on August 2nd, while real, was not entirely unprovoked. The resolution's swift passage was a testament to the political climate of the time. Few politicians were willing to risk appearing soft on communism during an election year. The memory of McCarthyism still lingered in the halls of Washington. The lie of the second attack became a foundational myth for the Vietnam War. It was a story told to unify the country behind a policy of intervention. The truth, when it finally emerged, helped to shatter that unity. It fueled the anti-war movement and created a credibility gap between the government and its people. The term credibility gap was popularized in large part due to the Tonkin controversy. The incident underscores the importance of a free and skeptical press. Without investigative reporting, the official story might never have been challenged. The sailors who reported the attack were victims of circumstance, not conspirators. Their senses were tricked by weather, technology, and the psychology of fear. The real deception happened thousands of miles away, in the quiet offices of power. It was a deception of omission, of ignoring doubt and amplifying certainty. The legacy of Tonkin is a deep-seated public distrust of government pronouncements about war. It became a powerful symbol of how intelligence can be politicized. The story is a stark reminder that the first casualty of war is often the truth. The events of August 4th, 1964 were not a battle against an enemy, but against phantom shadows. The real war was launched on the back of this spectral encounter. Maddox's own logs showed no visual confirmation of enemy boats during the second incident. Initial reports were based solely on sonar and radar readings, which were highly unreliable that night. The sonar operators were young and relatively inexperienced, interpreting ship noises and weather as torpedoes. McNamara's testimony to Congress presented the ambiguous data as concrete fact. He failed to convey the significant doubts that had already been raised by the task force commander. The rush to pass the resolution meant there was virtually no debate or critical examination of the evidence. The administration's narrative provided a simple story of good versus evil for a complex situation. This oversimplification was a key element in securing public and political support. The declassified NSA report was initially suppressed, as officials feared it would be embarrassing. It took an internal whistleblower to finally get the historian's true account released to the public. The Tonkin Gulf Resolution effectively handed a declaration of war power from Congress to the President. This shift in power had profound consequences for the American system of checks and balances. The war's escalation led to the draft, sending hundreds of thousands of young Americans to Vietnam. Many of them were sent to fight in a war whose justification was, at best, a distortion. The controversy eroded trust in the military and the presidency for a generation. The story is not just about Vietnam, but about the responsibility of leaders to be truthful with their people. It reveals that the first shot in a war can sometimes be a lie. The quiet waters of the Gulf of Tonkin on August 4th, 1964 were disturbed only by a storm. The battle that was reported was a battle against ghosts, a fight with the weather. Yet, this phantom battle convinced a nation to step into a real and devastating war. The truth, submerged for decades, eventually surfaced, revealing the flawed foundation of the conflict. It remains one of the most significant and cautionary episodes in modern American history.